So this piece started with the idea that I'd like to make a segmented vase, but have a solid wood base for the vase. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm cutting up a chunk of apple to start turning the base for the vase, and then I'll build segments on top of that. I'm not entirely sure how this will work out over time from a wood movement perspective. I know how the rings, the segmented rings, will expand and contract, but I have trouble wrapping my head around how the base will expand and contract, being that it came from a solid piece of wood. So hopefully in 6 months, when the humidity changes and the wood expands and contracts, it will hold itself together. I guess only time will tell there. So after turning the apple blank round and putting a mortise in the bottom of it, I started to shape the outside of the vase. With the bottom portion of the vase mostly roughed out, I could go ahead and flip it around and use my chuck to hold on to it so that I could remove material from the inside. With the bottom portion of the vase turned, it was time to start milling the lumber to make the segments. And for this particular vase, I'm using wenge, Caribbean rosewood, and sycamore to make the segmented rings. To cut the segments, I used my Incra miter sled, and the only reference for length that I used was a piece of painter's tape with a pencil mark on it, and I was really surprised at how accurately these segments came out. They were perfect right off the sled. And with the segments cut out, I could go ahead and glue my rings together. And for a clamp, I just used rubber bands. But there are many different ways that you can do this. You could use painter's tape and sort of roll it up into a ring, or hose clamps work well. I just happen to have a big bag of rubber bands. And with the first ring dry and sanded flat, I went ahead and glued it onto the bottom portion of the vase. I used a piece of plywood as a caul and my tail stop to keep it up nice and tight. While the glue was drying on that first ring, I decided to go ahead and glue up all the other rings so that I could start turning. I decided to only glue on one ring first so that I could sort of blend it in with the base, and also I could still reach my hand inside of it so that I could sand and sort of finish the inside of it as I went, because I knew as the base became taller it would be more difficult to work on the inside of it. And with the first ring turned and sort of blended on the inside and outside, I began to glue on more rings. and just continued the same process. At this point, the bottom portion of the vase, the apple, is to its final, I guess, thickness on the inside. The inside is turned and sanded and ready to go, and I'll bring everything down to the proper thickness from the outside of it. I think that's probably the best way to do it. However, up until now, I've always thought that turning the outside to final shape and then bringing it to the proper thickness from the inside was the way to go. However, in a project like this, I think that finishing off the inside and then turning the outside down to final thickness is probably a more accurate and easier way to, produce a piece like this. I really tried to use my traditional turning tools as much as I could on this piece because I'd really like to get better at using them, but for the inside of the vase I did revert back to using a carbide tool. I'm not a great turner, and there's something about working on the inside of a vessel that kind of freaks me out a little bit, and the carbide tool was the way to go for me. So now it's time to glue on the final 2 rings of the vase, and again I used my tailstock and a piece of plywood as a caul and just repeated the exact same process. I brought the rings into round from the outside, and then I worked on the inside until it was finished, and then back to the outside to finish it. And with the vase turned to its final shape and thickness, I could go ahead and sand everything one more time and start applying finish. For the finish on this vase, I went for my tried and true shellac. I put about 5 coats on it.